Review, a daily program that delves into the latest and most significant economic stories. From stock markets to currency news, Business Review covers the most up-to-date stories in the global financial world.
A symbol of New York and often the first ride into the city for airline passengers departing from overseas flights are struggling to attract wary passengers amid the spreading coronavirus outbreak. Amid news of the mounting disease, cabby Martin Osei wipes down his cab's passenger and driver sections after every ride in an effort to stay healthy. He beamed with pride when he displayed an aerosol can of Lysol he found that lists its targets at coronavirus. Despite his best efforts to maintain a pristine cab, Osei, a Nigerian immigrant who has been driving a yellow cab for 20 years, said his business had dropped 50% since news of the deadly coronavirus first surfaced. The Taxi and Limousine Commission urged 200,000 licensed drivers to pay special attention to disinfecting surfaces and objects that are touched often, such as door handles, armrests, and seatbelts. TLC spokesman Alan Fromberg said that includes cabbies who operate the city's 13,587 yellow taxis, as well as drivers of green and livery cabs, black cars, commuter vans, and 84,000 Uber and Lyft drivers. One of the most recognizable symbols of New York City, yellow cabs are facing yet another bump in what has been a rough road ever since rideshare car services like Uber and Lyft flooded the market with less expensive rides. New York City yellow cabbies, many whom invested their life savings to purchase a taxi medallion only to see its value plunge, have seen a string of suicides. Others suffered economic devastation, including Singh, who said the drop in his medallion value cost him his home, while many of who are wary of coronavirus spread are steering clear of shared spaces. Some long-time New Yorkers who ride yellow cabs regularly say they have always been germ-filled, and they are not overly worried that the problem has increased exponentially.
International Monetary Fund Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva said the fastest spread of the coronavirus will wipe out any hope of stronger growth in 2020, adding that a third of the fund's 189 member countries were now affected. Georgieva told a news conference after speaking to the IMF's steering committee that the fund now expects 2020 global growth will be below the 2.9% rate for 2019. And revised forecasts will be issued in coming weeks. The drop would represent more than a 0.4 percentage point drop from the 3.3% of 2020 growth rate that the IMF had forecast in January based on an easing of US-China trade tensions. Georgieva declined to say whether the escalating health crisis could push the world into a recession. Georgieva and World Bank President David Malpass underscored the importance of coordinated action to limit the economic and human impact of the virus. The fund is making available $50 billion in emergency funding for members that includes very low interest loans that could aid poorer countries in responding to the epidemic. Less than 2 weeks ago, the IMF had said the virus could shave 0.1 percentage point off its January global growth forecast. Georgieva said that the milder impact scenario was based on expectations that the coronavirus would be largely contained within China, but that view changed over the last week as the virus spread rapidly outside China to some 60 countries. The shift has vastly increased uncertainty and caused demand worldwide to weaken as individuals and businesses take precautions to avoid infection. Georgieva added, this has hit the trade and tourism sectors particularly hard and caused a major drop in demand for oil and other commodities. She added, while the spread of the virus has slowed in China, its growth rate also would be below the IMF's most recent forecast for 5.6% in 2020, but she said that the fund was encouraged by the restart of some production in China, now about 60% recovered, with China aiming to reach 90% in coming weeks.
U.S. President Donald Trump encouraged the American public to fly aboard domestic airlines, suggesting the chance of exposure to coronavirus while on an aircraft was minimal. Representatives from some of the nation's top airlines met with Trump, saying they have stepped up their cleaning and other procedures amid concerns about the coronavirus. Representatives from Southwest Airlines Company, United Airlines, American Airlines, and JetBlue, among others, attended the meeting at the White House with Trump, Vice President Mike Pence, and other top U.S. officials.
No gel. The sign was a common sight in the windows of Paris's pharmacies as people rushed to buy disinfectant hand gel to fight the outbreak of the coronavirus. The government announced it would regulate the price of the gels after prices were reported to have spiked since the start of the outbreak. Paris pharmacist Elim Pasti said there was a shortage of antibacterial gel recommended by the health ministry to reduce contamination, but that her pharmacy had not changed the selling price. Pharmacists Union Vice President Pierre-Olivier Verriot said price hikes by producers were to blame and called for government intervention. There have been more than 200 confirmed cases of the coronavirus and 4 deaths reported by French authorities.
The streets of La Balme de Silingui near the French Alps were deserted as residents stayed home in an effort to stem the spread of coronavirus, with more than 20 cases reported in the town. Municipal buildings, schools, the local library, and the youth center were all shut up, and public gatherings were prohibited until further notice, in the town identified as one of 3 clusters of the virus in France. The town has not imposed containment measures and residents are free to travel, but they are encouraged to stay at home as more as possible. Most of the inhabitants said that they were not worried about the disease, but some said they did not enjoy having to stay in. Some shops decided to stay open, but customers were rare. One of the employees at the local butchers, Antoine Hayden, said there had been a big impact on business. The mayor of the town himself has tested positive for the virus and is currently in isolation and being treated in hospital in nearby Annecy. In the Haute-Savoie region, there were 39 reported cases.
Business Review, your daily source for the most critical stories in the financial world. Tune in next time for the latest financial news impacting the world economy.